Music has spread around the globe for ages, making the earth an abstract and entertaining place to live. Our religion, our beliefs, even our entertainment revolve around music. People dance, sing, and write music every day to make paradise come to life. But how did this all happen? Did Earth suddenly create music by itself? Did someone improvise a way in which music was related? Did a leader inspire others to move forward and create their own special kinds of music? In the 1500s, people were stuck in the past, and we needed someone that would revive us into our glory once again. There is one of many others who stands out to this description. Johann Sebastian Bach was a fabulous musician who is considered one of the three most famous composers in the world, along with Beethoven and Mozart. He was a musician who composed many compositions and inspired other composers to strive for their very best. Bach was born on March 21, 1685 in Eisenach, Germany to Maria Elisabeth and Johann Ambrosius Bach. His father was a very musical man. Ambrosius played violin and was a church organist. He taught young Sebastian how to play violin and keyboard instruments at a very young age and was delighted to see that he was coming along very well in the musical world. Bach went to school at St. George's Church, but as his parents died of disease, he and his other brother, Johann Jacob, were forced to live with their older brother, Johann Christoph, that lived in a nearby town named Ohrdruf. As Bach continued to sing at that town, his older brother's family was becoming too crowded, so Sebastian had to move out again. Fortunately, his choirmaster, Elias Erda, was able to grasp a position at St. Michael's School in Lüneburg. Bach started to work his way into the musical lifestyle at age 18 when he accepted a position as a court musician with Duke Johann Ernst of Weimar. When he became a professional musician, he was very happy to compose, as it was a dream come true.
Bach was a musician that played many instruments, but he was most famed for playing the organ. Most of his life was spent playing the organ for royals and for the public. Also, he taught other students to play instruments, made practice music for them, and influenced them to make beautiful music themselves. Bach was also influenced by his family. Bach's two wives, former spouse Maria Barbara Bach and Anna Magdalena Bach, were very musical. His children had musical talent too. He was very happy with how his children performed, as his father was to him. As Sebastian went on to overcome many difficulties in his life, he continued to create beautiful, complicated compositions for the world to hear. But it was only in 1829, more than half a century later, when Felix Mendelssohn discovered Bach's piece, St. Matthew's Passion, which made other musicians realize what works of art Bach had left behind. While he wasn't exactly the richest man on the block, so to speak, Bach's love of music more than made up for it. More than 200 years after his death, Bach's music still seems to be everywhere. You can see young pianists playing his music, but you'll find the bulk of his fame resides in his choral work. His talents combined with his heavily influenced religious life are what paved his path to creating these compositions. Bach was a devoted Lutheran who had many influences in his religion. Martin Luther, a priest, had been to a place named Wartburg Castle which overlooked Eisenach, Bach's hometown, nearly 2 centuries before him. In this case, Bach was born under the influence of this religious leader. Bach had also transformed the hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," by Martin Luther into a song that was much richer. This piece of music is now called Cantata No. 80 and is a very loved hymn throughout the Lutheran society.
Bach changed the face of choral music by making the once simple works into pieces that were indefinitely richer and had a sound that no other person in the world had heard before. Two of his more renowned pieces are Mass in B minor and Toccata and Fugue in D minor. These two works of art were created for church choirs to create an angelic feel. These are two of many examples of Bach's masterpieces. Many doesn't exactly cover how many pieces of music Bach has created. With approximately 1,128 pieces of his music in existence as of today, experts estimate he could have written as many as 11,000 works. Within these masterpieces are trademark terms that showcases Bach's style. Arpeggios, chords, and scales all are tell signs of his compositions. This type of music also influenced many composers. Bach was often considered the king of figured bass. Figured bass is a type of music where the bass clef is composed first and then complications on the right hand is figured out last. One example of this happening in one of Bach's compositions is in the Concerto for Two Violins, strings and continuo in D minor. In figured bass, you can mainly hear the chord, while the other part of the orchestra is improvised from that bass line. Bach inspired many other famous classical composers such as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Mendelssohn, and many others. When Mozart was in Leipzig, he happened to hear one of Bach's pieces performed by one of Bach's former students. Mozart was amazed by what he heard. According to Johann Sebastian Bach and the Art of Baroque Music, an eyewitness said this: "Hardly had the choir sung a few measures when Mozart sat up startled. A few measures more and he called out, 'What is this?' And now his whole soul seemed to be in his ears. When the singing was finished, he cried out, full of joy, 'Now there is something one can learn from.' He was told that this school, in which Sebastian Bach had been cantor, possessed the complete collection of his motets and preserved them as a sort of sacred relic. 'That's the spirit, that's fine,' he cried, 'let's see them.' There was, however, no score of these songs, so he had the parts given to him, and then it was for the silent observer a joy to see how eagerly Mozart sat himself down, with the parts all around him, in both hands, and forgetting everything else, did not get up until he had looked through everything of Bach's that was there."
Bach had also inspired Beethoven in many ways. His music teacher, Christian Gottlieb Neff, had been in contact with Sebastian Bach's son, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, and had given Beethoven a copy of the Well-Tempered Clavier, which was a combination of preludes and fugues arranged by Johann Sebastian Bach. Beethoven would later on become one of the most famous composers in the world. Mendelssohn and Robert Schumann, both great composers, founded the Bach Society, in which it tried to categorize and publish all of Bach's late works. This was a very hard task, as very few manuscripts were published in Bach's later years, but the process was finally finished in 1900, long after Schumann and Mendelssohn had died. These huge amounts of Bach's works were later called Bach Work Collection or Bach Work Versknis.
Chopin was another classical composer that was affected by the way Bach wrote his music. Almost all of his 24 preludes were made after looking at the way Bach wrote his. It is said that Chopin took the Well-Tempered Clavier with him for trips to other cities so he could be inspired. Modern music artists are also affected by Bach. The piano guys have based their songs on classic composers' works such as Bach himself. Many of these modern transcriptions of music have roots back to classical music. A prime example of this is the Jaws theme. Many people speculate that this theme from the popular movie Jaws is actually derived from Dvorak's Symphony No. 9. Other examples would be in Fantasia and Phantom of the Opera, as they both use versions of Bach's toccata and fugue. Bach had been very successful in creating beautiful compositions and had made them live to their fullest. He has encountered many people that have had an effect on him and explored the many principles of developing and sharing his music. Bach exchanged his music for happiness and entertainment, as well as accomplishing things that others might not have. His compositions have influenced and inspired people all over the world to create beautiful things, and not just music. Yet in the end, words cannot describe how vital Bach is to our modern world.